Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Lore of Arda, the series where I cover the lore of Middle-earth. It's been some time since the last video, and it's because I plan to use footage from Kingdoms of Arda. But there are still topics where the mod can't really help, and today's topic is the Were-Worms of Middle-earth. So I'm gonna cover what Were-Worms are, did they really exist, and how are they depicted in both canon and non-canon. As always, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, so you get notified when new videos are out. You can now also become a member of the channel and support me making these videos. Members will get some sneak peeks of scenes I work on for various Bannerlord mods, access to custom emojis and cool badges, and a bunch of minor stuff like voting and information about upcoming videos. Let's get started and talk about Were-Worms. You might remember Were-Worms from the Hobbit films, and perhaps you thought it was simply another weird addition in those films. But the Were-Worms are actually mentioned in the Hobbit book. However, not at all like that. As Bilbo is about to set out on his adventure, he says the following: "Tell me what you want done, and I will try it, if I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild Were-Worms in the last desert." So from that we get the impression that they live in the far east of Arda, in a place called the Last Desert. How these creatures would look like is unknown. Some have speculated that they might look like Chinese dragons, and I think that's a fair interpretation when you look at the early drafts Tolkien made about these creatures. You may think it's weird to call a dragon-like creature for worm, but there's a dragon in Middle-earth that is known as Scatha the worm. And in Norse mythology, worm can be used for snakes, serpents and dragons. So did they actually exist? And what about the Last Desert? Well, perhaps, but there's reason to think that they didn't. This quote by Bilbo is the only time in Tolkien's works we hear about the Were-Worms and the Last Desert. So it's doubtful if the creature and the place existed, especially when you consider the fact that hobbits had a rich folklore with mysterious creatures like the Badgerfolk and mewlips. Creatures that likely didn't exist either. So when all that's taken into account, it's rather interesting that they were featured in the Hobbit films. But compared to some of the other things that they added, I feel it's a fair addition. In the Hobbit films, the Were-Worms are depicted as giant worms that serve the Dark Lord and create tunnels for his evil armies. By the looks of it, these giant creatures are similar to the Carnichtis seen in the King Kong film, also directed by Peter Jackson. To me, this proves that the Were-Worms featured in the Hobbit films are more of an Easter egg referring to King Kong than an honest interpretation of Tolkien's works. I know they are featured in the Shadow of War game as well, but I never played that one, so I can't say much about how they are portrayed in that game. In the Battle for Middle-earth games, the Were-Worms are also featured, though simply called worms. These gigantic worms were able to breathe fire as well, and were their main way of fighting. I personally don't think that Were-Worms existed in Tolkien's universe, but we can never know for sure. I think it makes sense to assume that they are simply part of the rich folklore of the hobbits, though there are older and fouler creatures in the world. In the Complete Guide to Middle-earth, Robert Foster seems to agree and suggest that Were-Worms may have been misremembered dragons among hobbits. Foster notes that worm is often used as another name for dragons, and werewolves refer to intelligent wolves capable of speech, traits which dragons share. So to conclude, while often depicted as gigantic worms digging tunnels beneath the earth, it's more likely that these would be dragons or creatures that may not have existed at all. I want to talk a little about MERP, a Middle-earth role-playing game from the 80s and 90s that's kinda like Dungeons and Dragons. In this game, the Were-Worms exist, and the Last Desert as well. The Were-Worms are said to be kin of the dragons, but have neither legs nor wings. While MERP is far from perfect, I feel they include a bunch of interesting stuff, and especially their maps have been a huge source of inspiration for Kingdoms of Arda. And no, there will not be Were-Worms, and the Last Desert will not be featured in the mod. And that concludes the video.